North of Port Renfrew, on the west coast of Vancouver Island, the Ancient Forest Alliance found and arranged for the protection of a small piece of old-growth forest, now known as the Avatar Grove.
Saving ancient forests is good for the economy. There's very little of it left, and we need more comprehensive policies to save old growth elsewhere. So the more we can promote Avatar, the better for a lot of other places as well.
I mean, this has become pretty much one of the most popular old-growth hiking destinations on Vancouver Island. It's been quite a rapid transition from, early or late 2009 when I first came across the area.
As a hiking destination, the Avatar Grove offers two trails. The upper, beginning with a moderately steep climb from the Gordon Main. Trailside plants include deer fern, trillium, and false lily of the valley. The famous gnarly tree marks the end of the upper trail. Directly opposite the upper trail, a loop trail descends into the lower section of the Avatar Grove. Bordered by bracken fern, sword fern, deer fern. Foam flowers like moisture and shade. Deadwood hosts shelf mushrooms and other polyphores, and always provides a woodpecker smorgasbord. To the side of the trail, a steep slope drops down to the Gordon River, which is barely visible as a white band beyond the trees. Leaving the slope, the trail passes another huge burl. I carried bear spray on my belt on this walk. Not that I was worried about bears, but why not? It wouldn't have been of much use left in the car. Actually, the only wildlife I saw on the trail was not threatening, and if it had been, I could easily have outrun it. In June 2015, Andy McKinnon led a group of interested people on a walk through the grove.
I'm a forest ecologist by profession and am very interested in things like differences between old growth and second growth forests, and also things like stand development. I've done a lot of research into stand development. The vast majority of the stems here are quite small. As TJ was mentioning, there are terrific storms that roar through this part of the world every winter, bringing with them incredible winds. And so we might assume that most of these smaller stems here have resulted from a blowdown that took down the stems that were there before. So let's just look at this great big leaning cedar over here that appears to be causing some distress, as was pointed out, to the hemlock that it's leaned up against. If you look up to the top of the cedar, see how it's bending over that poor hemlock that the cedar's fallen upon, right? The hemlock has little cones like this that you'll see all over the ground, these little cones of the hemlock. This is the cone of a Douglas fir, so it's way bigger. The burls, for many, many years, people have said, well, they're caused by bacteria or viruses. The reason they said they were caused by bacteria or viruses is because they couldn't figure out anything else that they were caused by. Now, some of the researchers are taking to calling them lignotubers. It's a wood decay fungus. That's its fruiting body, and it makes the little spores inside. And the cups are quite spectacular. People have done neat research where they've looked at the shape, the geometry of the cups, and if you made them any wider or you made them any narrower, a raindrop splashing into it wouldn't splash the spores out nearly as far. They are the absolute perfect shape for a raindrop to fall down and blow those spores out of there. This is the primary shrub you should learn for coastal British Columbia. This is called salal. It's the most important berry bush for First Nations throughout its range. Rarely the favorite berry, but it was certainly the most abundant, and in a number of different languages, the name for a salal berry and the name for berry are the same. So this is the red huckleberry, which produces red huckleberries, generally in areas that have a bit more light, and they're delicious and tart and fresh, and I love them. This forest has live trees and dead trees. It's got lots of wood on the ground. It's got trees that blew down, like this upturned root wad here. And when that happens, it creates holes in the ground and creates lumps. And you've got generations and millennia of wood in the soils here and a distinct community of organisms that live on that. All of those structural elements disappear in a managed forest. So it won't have any big trees, it won't have any dead trees, certainly won't have any big dead trees. And when the forest is logged, the wood will leave on trucks, and so you won't have any input of logs to the forest floor. So you'll start to lose all those structural elements, and the biggest differences then between old growth and second growth forests that we can measure are these structural elements. They're not the biological ones, but they have real biological importance to a lot of species.
It is important that we understand the dynamics of the forest, but the experience of this place can also speak to us at a deeper level. Some 200 years ago, Chief Seattle warned us, "Man does not weave this web of life. He is merely a strand of it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself." We can repeat these words, we can approve and believe them, but do we have the culture? Do we even have the language to assimilate such a worldview? Even those most dedicated to protecting the forest are forced to justify their actions in terms of our own culture.
Because the previous narrative was that you'll destroy the economy if you save old growth forests. It's done the opposite. It's bolstered the economy.
And as soon as we accept that the forest can be judged by its utilitarian economic value, we have begun to separate ourselves from the web of life and to lose sight of the spiritual values of untouched places. But at the end of the day, we have no choice but to live in our own culture, our own language. We can never see the natural world as Chief Seattle saw it, but we can be thankful for those who struggle to preserve some small portions for us.